Guild Wars 2 launched back in 2012 and still going hard till this day. Which is kind of nuts for the MMORPG, right? It's got this unique horizontal progression system, a high fantasy world, and a bunch of classes for both PvE and PvP. People have been loving it for years, and the community is still huge. The devs keep rolling out expansions and updates, so there is plenty of stuff to dig into. Sometimes too much, but I figure out, hey, it's 2025, time to see what all of the fuss about, and share my journey with you. So it's basically why you need to play Guild Wars 2 in 2025. First impressions by somebody who did try this game before but never dived deeper than the first levels. Yeah, by the way, my name is PLK and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, right? Like on all this stuff, comment below, let's go. Now, right off the bat, Guild Wars 2 is a free-to-play game, which is more crazy than the previous passage, right? The only real paywalls are expansions, which will get you new content, few of them will get you heroic classes, which are called professions here, and some really cool storylines, which are important for the Guild Wars 2, and I will explain later why. But you can play the whole game with whole endgame with everything PvP and PvP just free to play. So for someone just jumping in, it's awesome that you get so much content without dropping a dime. As I said, the game has a really loyal community, so there is a ton of info on YouTube if you get stuck or want to learn something more. The first game in the franchise, Guild Wars, have been supported for like 20 years, still to this day. And Guild Wars 2 itself once went through the weird 5 years period without major patches. Maybe developers thought that the game will die, but people still keep playing the game and they decided, why not to expand on the new content? And boom, came back strong with DLCs and expansions every year. And now we have something called Living Worlds, constant continuation of the story and the content updates every year. This video will consist from the different points like the beginning, character creation, combat system, PvE, PvP, all the endgame content and the conclusions in the end. So stick around, you will know everything that you need to understand is it worth playing for you this game in 2025. Right from the start, graphics. So this thing might feel weird at the beginning. You need to overcome the visual fidelity of the game, because the game is old. Relevantly, right? It might feel a little bit dated in places. Not every location is as shiny as a modern game. But some spots look really good, and then you start to adapt to the gameplay and to the graphics of the game, especially in the new expansions. And it feels more and more enjoyable. Maybe other aspects of the games are so good that you're starting to forget about the visual fidelity. Let's start with the character creation. Character creation here is pretty straightforward. Not super in-depth, but it's enough to get you going. And let me tell you, the classes are where it gets interesting. Each one has a few specializations, and they can feel like totally different classes once you focus on specific weapons and skill lines. Also, many classes can use a bunch of different weapons, and each weapon gives you different skills. Plus you have a hero points which you can use for the builds and different passives. So there is a lot of going on there, but you definitely understand right from the start that this game have a lot of experimentation potential for the building system, and I know for sure from the YouTube that there is a ton of different builds and you don't have one or two trendy builds which are everybody playing, right? That's good. Maybe that's part of why a lot of people have been playing this game for a long time, and most likely will continue when the Guild Wars 2 will be launched, which is in the development already. So, you have 5 very distinct races: humans, Nords, Asura, Char and Sylvari, and 9 unique classes. Warriors, typical; Guardians, a tankier warrior with the magic like a paladin; Ranger, typical ranger/hunter with the pet; Thief, rogue or assassin class with a stealth, poison and all of this cool stuff; Engineer, pretty cool and interesting with gadgets, explosions and a cool mechanics; Necromancer, a summoner and debuff damage over time class, master of the dark arts; Elementalist, the mage in the Guild Wars 2, with 4 elements for different situations like fire, water, lightning and earth. Very versatile and very complex. And Mesmer, the most unique class in many MMORPGs, by the way. This class is bending reality using illusions and clones and try to trick everybody. Very cool to play. And shiny, that's also good, right? And yeah, also you have a Revenant, which is a premium class. You need to buy something to play it. It's ethereal warrior, kind of mix of warrior and a thief. Now let's start the game and let's talk about questing and a progression system in the game. As I said before, the Guild Wars 2 has horizontal progression. What does it mean? Instead of the typical, hey, this is your next quest, go do that, collect these items, kill these mobs, you do basically the same, but with a different approach, and that is super cool. In Guild Wars 2, we have an open world zone events as the quest. So normal leveling progress will looks like you came to the new territory. You explore it and do the zone quests, represented by yellow hearts on the map, like helping a village to defend against the centers or guarding a merchant. The cool thing is, if you will ignore one of them, like ignore defending village from the centers, the next day the village might be conquered by them completely. So the next zone quest will be different as well. Pretty cool for the lore, right? Along the way, different events can appear, like rifts, bosses, additional zone quests, hero challenges, and so on. So you basically never pick up a quest. You just arrive, learn the story of the location, help people around, and progress to the next territory. Super smooth experience. And the cool thing, you are making all these quests all together. So all people around also contribute to these quests, and you have your individual contribution, yes, but all of the people doing the same stuff, which will influence the world after that. And the last one, maybe it's most important from all of them, you're also not limited by level. It will be reduced by the territory level, so you always feel like it's the right place to play, or you can move to your low level friends area and play together anyway. So most of the territories in the game are for 80s level, right? That's why all of the expansions, all of the new stuff in the game, it's not outdated, and you can play all of that to progress. Super cool. I will say that Guild Wars 2 seems like the only MMO truly made for exploration so far. Like, Final Fantasy XIV has an epic story, World of Warcraft has a deep lore and atmosphere, Lineage 2 has epic PvP battles, EVE Online is the most open world of open worlds, right? But Guild Wars 2 is an MMO about exploration for the progress, and it feels like that. It was right from the start, really unique experience for myself, and I'll say it was a good one. Like one time, I found a portal that teleported me to the waterlogged old temple, where I was alone trying to figure out where to go next. I found a few other players who were looking for clues on how to open the next door. We got past a few obstacles, then got stuck discussing how to move forward. It was just fun figuring out what was going on, and the game gives you a lot of experience just for exploring, which is the main point of fun in more RPGs, right? You're doing something fun and you're getting experience for that. It's weirdly unique and good. So every zone has its own story waiting to be discovered. Through the quests, events, in all, you just explore the new zones and gradually get involved into the story. The game feels very alive because of this. Even in newbie locations where few people are playing, those few folks are still around with you on events and so on. So no checklist for quests. Just open the world narrative by exploring it. Combat system. Guild Wars 2 has a hybrid combat system. It's a tab targeting or zone targeting for some spells. You choose the enemy by clicking on it or by using skill on the closest one. If you're smashing by your sword, all the skills will be AoE in a cliff. It feels like a real action combat, but with a tab targeting, if you can say like that. But the skills themselves usually don't force you to stay still or pay too much attention to the enemy position. If you select the target and click on the skill and you're in the right range and you're looking on the enemy, the skill will be used. Some skills like those for the Thief class feel even more like action combat, because you need to jump around, swing your daggers, and all this cool flashy stuff. Anyway, it looks like it was pretty innovative when the game was launched. Now it's just a bit unique, but it's definitely a good combat system. Maybe compared to the previous games that I tried this week, like the Queenfall, or the new games, which have pretty good combat system like Throne and Liberty, compared to all of this, Guild Wars 2 definitely have a good combat system, and you will love it. So it's fun to play, that's good. It feels smooth, and you can have depth in tactics and strategy because of the hybrid system. Fights also feels very dynamic and fast. Maybe Guild Wars 2 lacks a bit of impact feeling, similar to World of Warcraft Classic. You don't really feel the damage, you just see the numbers and hear the sounds. But as I said before, it's smooth and most importantly, it's fun. But that's not all. Along with all the combat system, we have the freedom to swap 2 weapon sets on the go. And also, each class has a lot of weapon they can use. The cool thing, each weapon for each class gives you a few unique skills. So experimenting with the 2 sets and a lot of skills could be endless. But that's not even all. Wait. You also have a hero talent points, which you can use to upgrade your passives and skill builds. This is still something I need to learn more about, So just say, if you want a variety of different builds that are playable in PvE and PvP without only a few meta ones, Guild Wars 2 definitely seems to be the game. So while I was recording the materials for the previous part of the video, I completely forget about that because I was playing Guild Wars 2. That's why we're recording the next part next day. I mean, that's super rare when you're only starting the game, and that's really good MMORPG. That's the thoughts about the game during the process of the recording. But let's continue. Expansions and the content. 6 major expansion packs have been released for the game. Heart of Thorns 2015, Path of Fire 2017, End of Dragons 2022. That's exactly 5 years without anything for Guild Wars 2, the strange time. Then Secrets of the Obscure 2023, Janthir Wilds 2024. A 6th expansion pack is developed, stated for 2025. Each expansion pack introduces new content, including new regions of the world to explore, endgame encounters, and masteries, with the first 3 also offering new professions, elite specializations you will say, and seasons of living world. Live content updates that continue expansion storylines and bridge the gap between them. In February 2023, it was announced that the Guild Wars 2 expansions, starting with the Secrets of the Obscure, would adopt a new release model. Instead of releasing every 2 to 4 years with a season of living world in between, smaller scale expansions would be released more frequently at a slightly reduced price. Additional content for these expansions will then be added through the quarterly releases. So nothing to add more personally, it just looks like it's a lot of content out there. And with the level adapting approach, players saying that you can have fun even now with the oldest expansions as well. Because it's basically new territories, new storyline, new content for you. And it doesn't matter when you started the game. So the devs doesn't refine the core experience like in World of Warcraft or other games when you reach the limit of the content on one expansion and just starting the new one from the scratch. Developers in Guild Wars 2 enrich it, so you can use it like in normal gameplay whenever you start the game, which is super cool, I think. New professions, which are classes in the game, right? We are remembering this. For some reason, it's super important for the community of Guild Wars 2. In every forum, every Reddit, everywhere, if you call the professions classes here, you will be harassed. Anyway, each of the 9 classes have 3 or so different heroic subclasses, which completely overhaul the main class, basically introducing the new classes. For example, Thief could be Daredevil, Deadeye or Spectre. And let's take Deadeye. Deadeye is an elite specialization for the Thief unlocked with the Path of Fire expansion. As I understand, you need to buy this specific expansion and then you can play as a Deadeye. Deadeyes are guns for hire, using Deadeyes mark to mark their target for assassination. They strike their target to generate melees, then consume it to empower their stealth attack, which is basically playing FPS type of the gameplay in the MMORPG. It's like completely different playstyle from the original Thief. Super cool. And so on, so on, so on. Now let's talk about content and endgame, PvE and PvP. As it's an old game, as I said before, the devs enrich it with each new expansion. It could be, and honestly, it is for the new player like myself, it is super overwhelming for the new players to understand all the systems and the content. But the good thing is, all the additional content is not mandatory to grasp right away. Like in other games, when you need to know everything and every system should be in use by you, otherwise you can't do the end game content. Here you can fully play the game and get to the end content on just a free account, then decide if you want more. Very unusually nowadays, right? The main thing that puts Guild Wars 2 apart from the other MMORPGs is its horizontal progression system. In a lot of MMOs, you chase the best possible gear in a never-ending cycle, and with each expansion, your gear, which you grinded for months, hello Throne and Liberty, become outdated. And don't get me wrong, I like grinding MMORPGs. Throne and Liberty, Online H2, or even World of Warcraft. When you grind your gear, is basically the main gameplay of the MMO. And it's fun and you have friends and guilds and PvP and so on, so on. But here, you have a different approach to the thing, which is really interesting. In Guild Wars 2, it's different vibe. I'm not exactly sure how, but players say that if you get some good pieces of the gear, it could be your best in slot for years. For years, man. Yep, you drop the game for the months or for the year, come back and your hero is still relevant. And you might ask, but why? How? what we will do in the game then, if not grind the gear? Well, as it seems, your gear remains relevant for a long time, but that doesn't mean that there isn't content like PvE dungeons, challenges, etc. to grind a new one for the different effects, to experiment on the builds, or to get new cosmetics. There are a lot of that kind of the content in the game. You just don't need one specific best in slot gear to play. And when you reach the end game, it's more about the community and having fun sessions of the gameplay rather than grinding. Pretty strange, I'll admit, and I still need to feel it myself to confirm because I'm not level 80. But that's what the community says. Pretty cool, I'd say. So in short, endgame content will mostly be open world events and storylines, which are, once again, pretty good. But we also will have dungeon, fractals, strikes and raids. And the thing is, the max level doesn't mean the end game in Guild Wars 2, because most of the zones in the game are made for level 80. Of all of the PvE activities I mentioned, dungeons might be the most understandable for people. But once again, developers went in a unique direction here as well. First, there aren't a huge number of dungeons in the game, but the quality of which is really high. So it looks like the developers went quality over quantity. The main reason is that dungeons are pretty long and fun. Let me explain. They're designed to be playable multiple times. In World of Warcraft, for example, we have really good designed dungeons, and we have a lot of them. But they're designed to be played once, then repeated in a high difficulty, or just repeat them all of these times to get the exact loot. But they're designed to be played only once. Here in Guild Wars 2, dungeons specifically designed with the idea that players will revisit them a lot. How? In simple terms, the dungeons continue their storylines when you come back at the higher levels. So you're starting in one level and then you continue to the dungeon many times, right? Yeah, it sounds weird, but it looks like it works pretty well. So each time you come back, you will have new storyline, new enemies, new areas and new bosses. And by the way, important thing that I forget, you don't have Holy Trinity in Guild Wars 2. You don't have tank, healer and damage dealers. Everybody in Guild Wars 2 are damage dealers with some extent of the buffs, debuffs, some healing, and every class have some little healing as well. It's not typical standard MMORPG experience in the dungeons, which is good and bad, and for me it was really big stopper at the beginning. That's why I didn't play this game for a long time. But now, when I tried a lot of MMORPGs, this experience kind of fun as well. So as I said, it's more like a session gameplay style, almost like in any hero shooter. Dungeons are pretty easy and a good activity to level up, and a lot of fun too. Next are fractals. Hard dungeons really cranked up. They only start at level 80, and each has 4 tiers. Each tier has super hard debuffs, like lowering your health or the power of heals and etc. So it basically has a soft gear requirement, otherwise your character can't handle just to go through the dungeon. Sometimes it can be too hard, but it looks like this is exactly the challenge for those who want better loot and achievements. The next ones are the most famous, like the most regular activities for the players, strikes. Mostly has 2 rooms, your spawn room and then straight to the boss arena. No trash mobs, pretty like the trails in Final Fantasy XIV. Fun, moderately difficult and a favorite activity for the average players. And the last one are raids. Raids typically big endgame content. They're pretty good here. The only question is no new raids for 6 years. So developers doesn't add new raids for the 6 years. And I'm not sure why the developers decided that. I know that strikes are like 90% of players' go-to activity, but still, not even one raid in 6 years? I mean, raids are cool, right? We don't have much here in Guild Wars 2. And then, PvP. So we have all of this content and all of this horizontal progression and cool stuff, exploration for the progress and so on, so pretty good game, right? And then PvP, which historically, for the Guild Wars franchise from the first game, is basically the whole new game in the main game. Let me explain. You can jump into the endgame PvP right after you finish your first main quest, so around level 2 or 3, when you doesn't know anything about the game. You get boosted to level 80 with a standard gear, so all of the gear kind of balanced. Without a proper build, yes, guilty, but for instance in my case, I won with my Necromancer with a level 8, the first unranked PvP mode, but lost completely with my Elementalist, because Elementalist seems like really complex class. Yes, PvP in this game is hard and not friendly to the new players at all, because there is no Holy Trinity, tank, heals, DPS. The combat system is hybrid and each class has so many variations and builds, it's hard to understand how to win. but everyone says PvP in Guild Wars 2 is super fun once you understand your class. So we have special hub for PvP, where you can join structured 5 versus 5 PvP modes for ranked and unranked games, tournaments made by the players, and many more cool things. With all the PvP cosmetics, battle passes, which seems like free for the seasons, and the whole who has the longest competition factor. You also have World versus World, a large-scale siege-type PvP. Alright, if we're talking about the structured PvP, you have arenas, deathmatches, and 2 cool modes. Conquest, ranked or unranked, 5 versus 5 capture point mode. Teams gain points by holding objectives and defeating enemies. This is the main competitive mode, used for the ranked seasons and automated tournaments. And a Stronghold, which is super fun, a MOBA inspired attack-defend mode. Teams fight to break through the gates, summon NPC reinforcements, and ultimately defeat the enemy guild lord. It was introduced with the Heart of Thorns expansion. While less popular than Conquest, it remains playable in unranked queues and custom matches. If Conquest is go-to for everybody, Stronghold is still a very good and balanced example of mixing PvP content with the PvE elements from the main game. And it's fun. Both game modes are very strategic, with buffs, stuns, dodges, skills, poison, and all of these cool abilities just fun to play. And World versus World. Honestly, a strange thing. After playing mass-scale PvP-oriented games like Lineage 2 or Throne and Liberty, it might look bad, or just odd. With no big purpose and people just rush PvE points, smashing one button to kill everything, and that's it. But anyway, you have it in the game. And yeah, that's basically it. Guild Wars 2 has ton to offer, from big open world exploration to dungeons, fractals, raids, and unique PvP modes. It might feel different if you're used to a heavy gear treadmill, but trust me, a lot of players love it, that you don't have to re-gear every expansion. The community is super cool, the devs have this regular schedule to put expansions for years. And who knows, maybe it will keep going strong until Guild Wars 3 and after. If you haven't tried it yet, I strongly suggest just to try the Guild Wars 2 in 2025. Just start with YouTube, check all these videos and all these communities on YouTube about the game, and you will see the different approach of people. If you will compare just a normal MMORPG and the community of Final Fantasy type, the fanatics, in a good way, it will be somewhere in between. People like PvP, people like just to explore and do the PvE. You can find many things in this game. For me, when I saw this PvP ranked system, I think it's something that will, pull me for a long time. Let's see. Guild Wars 2. Comment below if you like the video and what do you think about the game. Do you have any experience, and just which class should I choose for the PvP? My name is PLK one more time. Thank you guys. My community is growing super fast. We're almost 20k subscribers. It's huge. Thank you for that. Like the video or dislike the video. Comment below. I will see you next time. Bye.